Lecture 2, Getting Started. In today's lecture we will talk about the practice of stage 1 of Anapanasati concerning the kaya. But let me warn you in advance that there are altogether 4 groups of things that we must contemplate. Each group includes 4 things or dhammas. That makes a total of 16 dhammas. Of those 16, only 2 are the breathing itself. The breath is contemplated directly in only 2 steps. The remaining 14 steps focus on other things. In all, there are 4 parts or tetrads, each of which contains 4 steps. Today, we will speak about the first 2 steps of the first tetrad, the practice concerning the kaya body. 37. Physical preparations. We will begin at the very start with the preparations for practicing Anapanasati. First, we must choose a location or place that is suitable and appropriate for our practice. We choose the best available place knowing that we can never have a perfect situation. We try to find a place that is quiet and peaceful, where the conditions and the weather are good, where there are no disturbances. But when good conditions are not available, we do the best we can with what we have. We must choose something, somewhere. We must be able to practice even when sitting on the train coming down from Bangkok. Sometimes we can focus on the breath until we do not hear the noise of the train and do not feel the shaking as it moves. That shows that we can choose a location and use the conditions available to us in the best possible way. 38. We are not going to be defeated by any circumstances. Even on the train, whether we have perfect conditions or not, we will make the most of them and do what we can. When we want to practice, we can use the sound of the train itself as a meditation object. The clack 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 of the wheels on the rails can be our meditation object instead of the breath. In this way we have no objections about any location in the world, whether it is most proper or not very proper. We have no excuses regarding our choice of a proper location. 39. The next preliminary step is to prepare the body. We need bodies which are sufficiently normal, free of disease, and without any respiratory or digestive abnormalities. More specifically, we can prepare the nose so that it functions smoothly and correctly. In ancient times, they took some clean water in the palm of the hand, drew it up into the nose, and then blew it out. If we do this 2 or 3 times, the nose will be clean and prepared to breathe well. The nose will then be much more sensitive to the breath. This is an example of getting our bodies ready. 40. Time and teacher. Next, I would like to speak about time, and preparing the time of practice. Especially when we are determined to practice earnestly, we need to choose the most suitable and appropriate time that we can find. If, however, we cannot find a good time, we accept whatever we can get. We do not have to be enslaved to a certain time of day. When possible, we choose a time when there are no distractions and disturbances. When there is no time, however, that is completely free of distractions, we use the best time available. Then the mind learns to be undistracted regardless of how many disturbances there are. Actually, we are training the mind to be undisturbed no matter what is going on around us. The mind will learn to be peaceful. Do not limit yourself to any certain time when things must be just right, and you will never find it. Some people do this until they cannot find any time to meditate. That is not right. Always be flexible to practice at any time. 41. The next consideration is what they call an akariya, teacher, master. But in truth, even in the old training systems, they did not talk much about akariya. They called such a person a good friend, kalynamitta. To say friend, an advisor who can help us with certain things, is correct. We should not forget, however, principle that no one can help someone else directly. Yet nowadays, everyone wants to have a teacher to supervise them. A good friend is someone who has extensive personal experience and knowledge about the meditation practice or whatever else it is that we are striving to do. Although he is able to answer questions and explain some difficulties, it is not necessary for him to sit over us and supervise every breath. A good friend who will answer questions and help us work through certain obstacles is more than enough. To have such a kalynamitta is one more thing to arrange. 42. Sitting posture. Now we come to the actual activity of meditation itself, The first thing to discuss is the sitting posture, see Figure 1. It is necessary to sit in a way that is stable and secure, so that when the mind is semi-conscious we will not fall over. Be able to sit just like a pyramid. Pyramids cannot fall over because they have a very solid base and sides that rise up into a central pinnacle. There is no way that they can fall down. Consider how long the pyramids in Egypt have been sitting. Learn to sit like a pyramid. The best way to do this is to sit cross-legged. Put your legs out in front of you, then pull the right foot up onto the left thigh and the left foot up onto the right thigh. These who have never sat this way, who may not even be used to sitting on the floor, may need some time to train the body to sit in this way, but it is worth the effort. You can patiently, gradually train yourself to sit in this way. Then you will not fall over. It will be impossible to fall forwards, backwards or sideways. From ancient times this way of sitting has been called the lotus posture, Padmasana. Figure 1 Sitting postures. It is also important to sit upright with the vertebrae and spine in proper alignment without any bends or curves. The vertebrae should sit snugly on top of each other so that they fit together properly. This is what is normal for the body. The spine is a vital part of the nervous system, so we should sit erect in order to keep it straight and correct. This is good posture. 43. At first, it may be difficult for those of you who have never sat like this. Nevertheless, I must request that you try to do it. The first time, you may be able only to fold your legs in front without crossing them. That is enough to begin. Later, put one leg on top of the other, cross one leg. Finally, you will be able to cross both legs in a full lotus. This way of sitting is as compact as a pyramid and will not tip over when the mind is concentrated or half concentrated. A straight spine is quite necessary because there are different kinds of breathing. If the spine is bent, there will be one kind of breathing. If the spine is straight, then there will be another kind of breathing. Therefore, we must try to straighten the spine, even if it is a little bit difficult at first. 44. Next, the hands. The most comfortable and easiest thing to do with the hands is to let them fall onto the knees. Another way is to lay the hands on top of each other in the lap. The second position may be uncomfortable for some people because the hands will become hot. If we rest them on the knees, they will not get hot. Some groups advise to fold the hands in the lap with the thumbs touching in order to have concentrated hands. To press the hands together can aid concentration. That can also be good. It is how they do it in China. Choose which seems most suitable for you. The hands will not heat up if you leave them on the knees. Or you can lay them on the lap if that is comfortable. Or you can press them together to increase concentration a bit. You can choose from these three positions of the hands. 45. Cool, concentrated eyes. Now, the eyes. Should we leave them open or should we close them? Many people believe that they must close their eyes, that they cannot meditate with open eyes. If you are serious about what you are doing and have a sufficiently strong mind, it is not difficult to practice with the eyes left open. Begin with the eyes open. Open them with the determination to gaze toward the tip of the nose. This is not at all impossible. It just takes a little effort to do so. Gaze at the tip of the nose so that the eyes will not get involved in other things. When we close our eyes, we tend to be sleepy, so be careful about closing the eyes. Also, when the eyes are closed, they become warm and dry. Meditating with the eyes open will help us to stay awake and will keep the eyes cool and comfortable. Further, this will help the mind to be concentrated. It will aid the development of samadhi. As samadhi, concentration, develops about halfway, the eyes will close naturally by themselves. The eyelids will relax and drop shut on their own. There is nothing to worry about. The complete technique is to begin with the eyes open. Gaze at the nose tip until samadhi develops, then the eyes will close on their own. That takes care of the eyes. 46. Practicing with the eyes open and gazing at the tip of the nose is automatically a noticeable level of concentration. If we establish all of the mind upon gazing at the tip of the nose, we will not see anything else. If we can do this, it will be a certain type of samadhi. We will profit from having this much concentration right from the start. Merely look at the nose without seeing anything else. If all of the mind, all of its interest is set on looking at the nose, then nothing else will be seen. This samadhi is not insignificant. Therefore you ought to try to start with open eyes. 47. Please observe that this is something anyone can do. We are intent upon gazing at the nose, at feeling the nose, and at the same time we feel the body breathing. Both can be done. It may seem that both are being done at exactly the same moment, but they are not. There is not anything unnatural or supernatural about it. Because of the mind's great speed, it is possible for the eyes to be gazing at the tip of the nose while being aware of breathing in and breathing out. You can see this for yourself. 48. Following the breath with mindfulness. At last we come to the noting, the contemplation, of the breathing. To start, we must have sati, mindfulness or reflective awareness. We begin to use sati by being mindful of the in and out breath. We train sati by noting that we are about to breath in or about to breath out. Let the breathing go uncomfortably and normally. Let it be natural. Do not interfere with it at all. Then contemplate each breath with mindfulness. How are we breathing in? What is the out breath like? Use sati to note the ordinary breath. In the beginning we develop and train sati using a technique called following or chasing. The in-breath starts at the tip of the nose and we imagine that it ends at the navel. The out-breath, we imagine, begins at the navel and ends at the tip of the nose. In between is the space through which the breath runs in and out. Sati contemplates the properties of this movement in and out from the tip of the nose to the navel, and then back and forth. Do not allow any gaps or any lapses. This is the first lesson. Contemplate the breath with sati. 49. We are not anatomists, but we know that the breath only goes into the lungs, that it does not go all the way down to the navel. We only imagine that the breath itself ends at the navel. We do not hold it to be true. This is just an assumption based on our feeling of insensitivity to the movement of the breathing. When we breathe we feel movement all the way down to the navel. We use that feeling as the basis of our practice and follow the breath between the tip of the nose and the navel. The distinction as to whether it is sati which follows the breath in and out or that sati forces the mind to follow the breath in and out is not important at this point. The only thing that matters is to contemplate the breath as if chasing it, without ever losing it. It goes in and stops a moment. Then it comes out and pauses a moment. In and out, with short breaks in between. Note everything and do not let anything slip by. Do not allow empty spaces where the mind might wander. Keep the mind constantly on the breathing in and out. This is the first lesson to learn. It may not be so easy. Maybe it will take 3 days, 3 weeks, or 3 months until you are able to do it. It is the thing that we must do in this first step. Here we are merely explaining the method of training. You may not get very far in a 10-day course like this, but it is important to know what needs to be done and get started. Once you understand the method correctly, you can practice on your own until you get it. Start by contemplating the breath between these 2 points without leaving any chances for the mind to wander off to something else. 50. Many kinds of breath. While we practice following, we have the opportunity to observe various characteristics of the breath. We can feel many things. For example, we can feel the longness and the shortness of the breath. We naturally learn about the long breath and short breath. Then we observe the coarseness and fineness of the breath. Further, we observe its smoothness and burnpiness. Later, we will observe the reaction to these qualities. In this first step, contemplate these different kinds of breath: long and short, coarse and fine, easy and uneasy. Begin to observe them by feeling them with sati. 51. We must learn how to observe in more detail, that is, to observe the reaction or influence of the different kinds of breathing. What reactions do they cause? How do they influence our awareness? For example, when the breathing is long, how does it influence our awareness? What reactions does the short breathing cause? What are the influences of coarse and fine breathing, comfortable and uncomfortable breathing? We observe the different types of breath and their different influences until we can distinguish clearly how the long and short breaths, coarse and fine breaths, and comfortable, uncomfortable breaths differ. We must know the variations in the reactions to and influences of these various properties of the breath, of these qualities that influence our awareness, our sensitivity, our mind. 52. Along with the above observations, we need to watch the effect or flavor of the different kinds of breath. The flavors that arise are kinds of feelings, such as happiness, non-happiness, dukkha, annoyance, and contentment. Observe and experience the flavors or effects caused, especially, by the long breath and short breath, by the coarse breath and fine breath, and by the easy breath and uneasy breath. Find out how it is they have different flavors. For instance, we will see that the long breath gives a greater sense of peace and well-being. It has a happier taste than the short breath. Different kinds of breath bring different kinds of happiness. We learn to analyze and distinguish the different flavors that come with the different kinds of breath that we have scrutinized. 53. Finally, we will discover the various causes that make the breath either long or short. We gradually will find this out for and by ourselves. What causes the breathing to be long? What kind of mood makes the breath long? What kind of mood makes it short? Thus, we come to know the causes and conditions that make the breath long or short. 54. There is a way for us to regulate the breath in these beginning steps in order to make it longer or shorter. If we would like to train with this, we have a technique called counting. For example, in one inhalation we count to 5, from 1 to 5. If we count to 10, from 1 to 10, the breath will lengthen accordingly. On an ordinary breath we only count to 5. For a short breath we might count to 3, and that changes the breath as we wish. Always count at the same speed, for if the pace of counting changes it would negate the effect of counting higher or lower. By counting, the lengths of the breath can be regulated. We can lengthen or shorten them using the special training technique. We do not have to use it all the time. It is just a little experiment we can use from time to time in order to regulate the breath or to get to know it better. Give it a try whenever you want. 55. Step 1. The long breath. By now we have developed an adequate preliminary understanding of the breath. We know about the various properties of the breath: longness, shortness, coarseness, fineness, easiness, and uneasiness. Our knowledge extends to the things connected with the breath, the reactions toward and influence of these properties as felt in our minds. We even know how to control the length of each breath. The next thing to do is to enter a course of training with them. Now that we understand all these things, we begin training with the long breath. 56. We have come to the first lesson, the first step, namely, the contemplation of the long breath. We are able to breathe long whenever we need to. We have learned how to make the breath long and how to keep it long. In this first lesson, we will study the long breath exclusively. We study the nature of all the facts about the long breaths. When a breath is long, how pleasant is it? How natural and ordinary is it? What kinds of calmness and happiness are involved? In what ways is it different than a short breath? This means that we now study just the long breath using the method described above to find out its properties, qualities, influence, and flavor. Only study the long breath here. Sit and investigate the long breath exclusive 1Y. This is lesson 1, understanding all matters connected to the long breathing. 57. Finally, we must observe how the body works in relation to the long breath. When there is a long inhalation, how does the body move? In what places is there expansion? In what places does the body contract? When there is a deepest possible long breath, does the chest expand or contract? Does the abdomen expand or contract? These are things to examine. In doing so, you may learn that it works differently than you thought. Most people have the overly simple idea that when we breathe in the chest expands and when we breathe out, the chest contracts. In studying the breath carefully, however, we find that in taking the longest inhalation, the abdomen will contract and the chest will expand. With the very long exhalation, then, the abdomen will expand and the chest will contract or deflate. We find the reverse of what common sense teaches. You ought to investigate this business of the very long breath, the longest possible breath, to see what changes happen. Do not take anything for granted. You ought to understand even these most basic natural facts. 58. We study all the secrets of the long breath, everything about the long breath. In order to know the nature of the long breath, we are able to contemplate the longness. We can protect it and maintain it. This means that we are expert in all matters concerned with the long breath. Practicing with the long breath is lesson 159. An extremely important thing to learn is the interrelationship between the breath and the body. There is a very close interconnection between the two. Find out what effects the long breath has on the body. Discover the happiness and comfort it brings. Further, we will know the secret that there are two kaya, the breath body and the flesh body. We ought to observe this even at this early stage, although we will not go into it specifically until step 3. Still, in our lesson here, we should begin to realize how the breath and the body are interconnected. Therefore, please observe when breathing long, or when breathing whatever way, how it affects the rest of the body. We will grow more certain, through personal experience rather than thinking, that the breath is intimately associated with the body. 60. Step 2. The short breath. We have now completed the first lesson, which is about the long breath. We can move on to the second lesson, that concerning the short breath. We really do not have to say much about this step, because it is practiced in exactly the same way as with the long breath. The only difference is that step 2, the second lesson, uses the short breath. Whatever we learned about the long breath, we must learn the equivalent facts about the short breath. 61. For instance, we will observe and feel immediately that the long breath brings ease and comfort while the short breath leads to abnormality, that is, uneasiness, agitation, and discomfort. With this knowledge, we will know how to make the body either comfortable or uncomfortable by regulating the breath. We need to know the complementary differences between the two kinds of breath as clearly as possible. So in the second lesson, we are interested in the short breath in particular. Study everything, every aspect, every property, of the short breath until you know it as extensively as you know the long breath. Although the two kinds of breath have opposite natures, our way of studying them is identical. 62. Of special interest is the observation that when we breathe long, the breath is fine. When we breathe short, the breath is rough. Once we learn how to make the breath fine or coarse as we wish, we can use this ability to our advantage. The benefit is that the fine breath will calm down our bodies. They become cool. When we wish to cool down our bodies, we bring out the fine breath. When we require fine breath, we simply make the breath longer. This is one of things that we need to study. 63. Another example is that when we are angry, the breath is short. When the breath is short, the body is disturbed also. If we can make the breath long, the anger will not be able to continue. When we are angry, the breath is short and rough, and the body is rough. We can drive away anger by breathing long. The body will be relaxed and that anger will go away. This is an example of the many different interactions and relationships between the breath, the body, and the mind. This is what we must understand about the relationship and difference between long and short breathing. We must experience this, must feel it for ourselves, fluently and expertly. 64. Breathing away emotions. To summarize these first steps, it is possible to regulate, control, limit, and manage the emotions by using the breath. We can make the emotions correct, useful, and beneficial through the breath. Through our knowledge of the breath, we develop the ability to control the breath itself. If we can train the breathing, then we can control the emotions, that is, cope with the happiness and pain of our lives. Practice until you can feel this. Your practice is not complete if you cannot see this clearly. 65. When you are sitting in meditation and a mosquito bites you, you develop an evil emotion. How can you get rid of it? The way to drive it away is to improve the breath. Make it long, make it fine, make it chase that wicked emotion away. This is the best way to solve the problems. This is another example of the beneficial knowledge and abilities that we are training. 66. The different topics and points of view to be studied in the first lesson about the long breath and in the second lesson about the short breath are the same. The only difference is that everything is complementary. The number and type of things to study are equal, but the differences between long and short lead to complementary sets of facts. Well, the time for today's talk is finished. We only had time to discuss steps 1 and 2. We will leave the steps of this tetra for tomorrow. Today's meeting is over. 67. Lecture 3, Calming the Kaya.